and Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
What's going on? It's the real Jonathan Smith Show on a great Friday morning. It's starting to feel like fall. Football tomorrow, football on Sunday. Let's get this weekend started off correctly. Thank you for tuning into the show, no matter how you're tuning in, whether that's YouTube, Indy Sports Ticket. If you want to head over there and subscribe, maybe you're watching on X _ Jonathan Smith to follow me there and watch the show there. You can also listen on that Indy Sports Ticket app. Oh, man. Colts game tomorrow. Big Indiana game tomorrow. I can't wait. It's going to be awesome. So let's start with the Indianapolis Colts playing host to the Arizona Cardinals on Sunday. I went through it yesterday. This Cardinals team, even though they're 2-3, it's a solid 2-3. Their 3 losses all coming on last-second field goals. One problem for Arizona. Kyler Murray didn't practice again yesterday, which I found very surprising, considering he got hurt against the Titans in the third quarter, and he finished the game. He came back in. He played the rest of the way, but I did say he didn't scramble once. And that's a red flag because of all the quarterbacks in the NFL, Kyler Murray scrambles the 5th most. That dude loves to leave the pocket and run. And he didn't do that at all in the fourth quarter against the Titans. So there's a little wariness there. There is a world where he still plays, but if he doesn't practice today, then we'll kind of see how things pan out for him. If he does not play, then the Colts absolutely have to win the game on Sunday. This goes from a game that they should win and probably need to win to a game where it's like they should absolutely win, because it's the Arizona Cardinals with a backup quarterback. This is different than playing the San Francisco 49ers or the Minnesota Vikings with a backup quarterback, because Kyle Shanahan can win with anybody, including Nick Mullins and Mac Jones. And Kevin O'Connell, if you play quarterback for that dude, you're just immediately a stud. Carson Wentz went from being a backup everywhere to now he looks kind of like a dude again in Minnesota. Those teams with those coaches have proven that they can win with a backup quarterback. Jonathan Gannon, head coach of the Arizona Cardinals, is a defensive-minded guy. They're not elevating the quarterback play. Jonathan Gannon got there, and Kyler Murray's the same guy that he was when Cliff Kingsbury was his head coach. He's the exact same guy. He's probably going to leave the pocket earlier than he should. He's, going to throw a couple jump balls every game, going to scramble for a few first downs. He's the exact same guy that he was with Cliff Kingsbury. So I highly doubt that Jonathan Gannon, the rest of his staff, are going to roll into Lucas Oil and coach Jacoby Brissett up to a point where he has the game of his life. Okay, the offensive coordinator clearly isn't great because this offense has been bad all year with Kyler freaking Murray at quarterback. They can't run the football, so it's not like they're going to be able to relieve the pressure off of Jacoby Brissett. With that being said, Jacoby Brissett is a high-end backup in the NFL. He is. High-end guy. He was here in Indy for quite some time, but there's a reason why he's a backup. There's a reason for it. Right? There's a reason why he's been a backup for a long time. He spent time in Indianapolis. It didn't go very well, right? He was obviously the starting quarterback the year that Andrew Luck decided to retire right before the season started, and he went 7-8 that year here in Indianapolis. He was also the starter in 2017, went 4-11 in 15 games. Not great. Not great at all. Each year he struggled to complete 60% of his passes, and since then, as I said, he's been a high-level backup in the NFL. Okay? But he is clearly a backup. Right? He's not some fringe starter that teams are like, you know what? Like, we need a bridge gap year. Let's bring in Jacoby Brissett. Nope. He's not, he's not that. We've seen teams do that with guys like Tyrod Taylor and all those things. So, Jacoby Brissett does not scare me. He shouldn't scare you either. He's clearly a backup, and that makes this game for the Colts a must-win. They absolutely have to win this game. It's not like the Cardinals are going to be able to rely on the run game because their top two running backs are out. They don't have a player averaging over 40 rushing yards per game. Their leading rusher probably isn't going to play, and it's not one of their top two running backs. It's Kyler Murray. If Kyler Murray doesn't play in this game, it should be a game filled with third and longs for Jacoby Brissett. That should be a winning recipe for this Colts team. Pin the ears back. Go put some pressure on Jacoby Brissett. Travarius Ward, Cam Bynum, Nick Cross, do your thing on the back end. Mekhi Blackman, Jonathan Edwards, just don't ruin a good thing. That's what this game should look like. This should be another, I don't want to say it should be another blowout because the Cardinals do have professionals and they do have a lot of really good players. Trey McBride's one of the 5 best tight ends in football. Marvin Harrison Jr. is a good player. I like Zay Jones. I like Greg Dortch. Paris Johnson Jr. is one of the best offensive tackles in football. Budda Baker's an elite safety. Will Johnson out of Michigan at corner has been really good when he's played. Josh Sweat, 5 sacks in 5 games. So, they have good players. But I do not care. So do the Indianapolis Colts. They should win this game. And they need to win this game because we've made 2 transitions with the Colts this year. We come into the year, Daniel Jones is starting quarterback, Colts are 0-0. It's like, hey, maybe the Colts win 10 games and they grab like a wild card spot. That'd be cool. And then the Colts started 3-0. We're like, maybe the Colts go like 11-6 and they win the division. Very possible. And I feel like we've even transitioned beyond that now. I know that the Jaguars are 4-1, but they're not as consistent as the Colts are. Spoiler alert, I am betting against them this week when they play host to the Seattle Seahawks. So they're not as consistent as the Colts are. The Colts are now legitimately competing for the 1 seed in the AFC. That is 1,000% in play for them. But they have to win games like this to earn it. I think it's either going to be them or it's going to be Buffalo. That's who's going to earn the 1 seed in the AFC. Obviously, teams have to stay healthy and all those things. And the separator between these 2 things is going to be their records in games that they should win. Because when you go through the schedules, and I'm going to do that here in a second, when you go through the schedules, I mean, neither one is super tough. By the way, the reason why I'm saying it's the Colts and Bills duking it out, the Steelers are currently the 3 seed, and if you've seen Pittsburgh play, this is not a team that's going to win 12 or 13 games. Okay? Jacksonville, as I already said, not super consistent. The Patriots are the 6th seed, and they're 3-2. The Broncos are 3-2, and they don't have the tiebreaker over the Colts. Every team after that has a losing record. Really tough to go from 2-3 to 13-4. You got to go like 11-1 the rest of the way, which is possible, right, for teams like Kansas City. But that's really the only team that's possible for amongst all the other 2 and 3 teams. So the Colts have a legitimate chance to duke it out with Buffalo for the 1 seed. That's a first round bye. It'd be another year of not having to watch the Colts on Wild Card Weekend, but this year it'd be a good thing. But they have to win games like this in order to keep pace with a Buffalo Bills team whose schedule looks like, the first 10 picks in the NFL draft. This week, They're playing Atlanta on Monday Night Football. And then they have a bye. And then they get to play the Panthers. And then they're at and the Kansas City Chiefs at home. That's a tough game. But then they're at the Dolphins. That's another game that they should win. And then they get the Buccaneers at home. Another tough game. But middle of November, it's going to be cold. I would probably take Buffalo in that game. And then they're at Houston. That's a game that they're probably going to win. And then they're at Pittsburgh. It's a game that they're probably going to win. And then they get the Bengals at home. That's a game that they're probably going to win. And then they're at New England. I know that they lost to New England, on Thursday night or Sunday night, Monday night, whenever they played New England. They lost that game. And with that being said, I don't expect for the Patriots to sweep the Bills. And then they're at the Browns. They should win that game. And then they get the Eagles at home, who don't look very good right now. Maybe they right the ship by week 17. But the Bills should win that game. And then they play the Jets at home. Another game that they should absolutely win. It is an incredibly easy schedule for the Buffalo Bills. Right? There's 2 games on there that I feel like they could legitimately lose. Kansas City, who they get at home, which is an advantage, and the Buccaneers, who they get at home, which is also an advantage. Every other game on there, I expect for them to win. So let's say that happens. Then they finish the year 14-3. The Colts' schedule, not super tough. A little bit tougher than what the Bills have. Cardinals at home this week. That's a game that the Colts should win. They're favored by over a touchdown now. The Chargers, tough game, but the Chargers are pretty banged up. Colts got to go on the road for that one as well. So that's one legit potential loss for them. And then they get the Titans at home, a game that they should win. And then they're at the Steelers. I know it's on the road, but they've beaten the Steelers 3 times in a row now. The Steelers feel a little fraudulent. That's a game that the Colts should win if they continue playing at this level. And then they get the Falcons overseas. That's a game that they should win. They're at the Chiefs. That's a game that they should probably lose. Houston at home's very winnable. At Jacksonville, I understand that the Jags are 4-1, but this Colts team just feels different. I really kind of expect for them to sweep Jacksonville this year. And then they're at Seattle. That's a very losable game. They get the Niners at home. Christian McCaffrey probably won't be healthy week 16. And then it's the Jags at home, and then it's at Houston. There's 3 games on the Colts schedule that I feel like are very legitimate potential for losses in those games. And so if that happens, then they're 13-4. So if they just win all the games that they're supposed to, that'll put them a game behind Buffalo. So they're going to need Buffalo to lose games that they shouldn't. And the Colts have to avoid losing games that they shouldn't. Like this week, this needs to be a win for the Colts. If it's the Colts and Bills at the top of the conference, it's going to come down to games like this. You have to avoid dumb losses. And losing to a backup quarterback at home would classify as a dumb, avoidable loss, especially when the Colts are as healthy as they are. After the win last week, if Kyler Murray doesn't play, I would honestly be shocked if the Colts lost this game. This Colts team is just so different from the Colts teams of the last, 4 or 5 years. They seem like the kind of team that's just going to take care of business. Daniel Jones, very serious dude, very relaxed guy, but everything you hear about him is, he's constantly watching film and constantly doing the extra work. Cam Bynum seems like he's kind of come in and become this new leader of the defense. And every time someone talks about Cam Bynum, they talk about 2 things. They talk about his personality and how infectious it is. And they talk about how that dude's always doing extra work. So there's just been this shift in the culture that makes me believe that this Indianapolis Colts team is one that is going to take care of business in the games that they should. They're at home against a bad offense that might or probably is going to have a backup quarterback in. Whatever the line is, take it. I'm telling you right now, I'm taking the Colts in there. I am. It snuck into my 5 NFL bets that I give out each and every single week. right? C. Fitch chiming in saying Arizona may be able to run the ball against these awful Colts linebackers. I don't know, man. They haven't been able to run the football against anybody. I mean, like the Cardinals might be like one of 3 teams in the NFL who are so bad at running the football that it doesn't matter how terrible these Colts linebackers are, even though bringing in Jermaine Pratt will give them a boost. Like, they couldn't run the ball against the New Orleans Saints. They couldn't run the ball against the Carolina Panthers. They couldn't run the ball against the Tennessee Titans. Like half of their rushing yards in that game came off of one play. So trust me, I've been leading the charge on the we like our guys position group of the year, those linebackers. But it may not matter in this game. That's how bad the Arizona Cardinals are at running the football, and they've got a couple of starting offensive linemen that are banged up. If they don't play, hard not to like the Colts. Just saying. So, backup quarterback at home against a team that can't run the football. Give me the Colts every day of the week and an extra time on Sunday. Injuries, very important, as they always are. Obviously, Kyler Murray, we don't know if he's going to play or not. They've got some other injuries as well. So do the Colts. Injury update, Grover Stewart, he didn't practice yesterday after being a full participant on Wednesday. What does that mean? Who are the other guys for the Colts who didn't practice? I've got all that in 4 minutes.
Tickets at noon. The Real Jonathan Smith Show. Now, this is Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
Welcome back to the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. Thank you for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in, whether that's YouTube, Indy Sports Ticket. If you want to head over there and subscribe, maybe you're watching the show on X__Jonathan Smith to follow me there and watch the show there. You can also listen on that Indy Sports Ticket app. Shehan Jeyarajah of CBS Sports, he's going to join the show coming up at 11 o'clock to get you ready for the college football weekend. More discussion around Indiana and Oregon. I can't wait for that game tomorrow. It's going to be a blast. I'm about to talk about it, but first we got to touch on these injuries between the Arizona Cardinals and the Indianapolis Colts. So let's start with the Cardinals. Obviously, Kyler Murray is the leading one here. He didn't practice again. Didn't practice on Wednesday. Didn't practice on Thursday either. The only other guy for the Cardinals who did not practice was Darius Robinson. He's got a pectoral issue. So it doesn't look like he's going to play. Everyone else, though, for the Cardinals was either limited or a full participant. Still looking at Mack Wilson Sr., who was limited again. That's their best linebacker. Still trying to pay attention to Max Helton and Will Johnson, their two starting corners. They were both limited again. So we'll see if those two guys play or not, or all three of them. The hope is that they don't, right? Because I would love to see Alec Pierce and Michael Pittman Jr. Excuse me there. I would love to see Alec Pierce and Michael Pittman Jr. running routes against the backup corners for the Arizona Cardinals. And look, this has been a very successful Cardinals defense. It's been a very successful Cardinals defense against or with backup corners. They're fourth in the NFL in points allowed per game, and they've played a couple of very good offenses, to start the season. Seattle's offense is good. The 49ers and so on. So it's a good defense even without those guys. So with those guys, they would be even better. So hopefully those guys miss. Sorry, my voice just keeps, I don't know, I keep getting stuff in my throat. It's not great. Maybe water will help. There we go. Water. Amazing what happens when you drink water. And then for the Colts, it's an interesting thing. Tyler Goodson, he didn't practice again. I'm not really worried about that. Jonathan Taylor, best running back in football to start the season. So hopefully, Tyler Goodson is able to come back soon. But as long as they have Jonathan Taylor, I'm not really worried about Tyler Goodson. Tyquan Lewis, he's back. He was sick on Wednesday, so he was a full participant yesterday. He's cool. Kenny Moore still isn't practicing yet. The only guy that I'm concerned about for the Colts is Grover Stewart. So he comes out on Wednesday, full participant in practice, and then yesterday he did not practice. So I don't know what that means. That is not a normal thing. Usually if guys are full participants on Wednesday, then, they're back and they're ready to roll on Thursday as well. Going from a full participant to not participating at all, it's a little concerning, but, we'll see if he practices today or not. If he does, then I'll feel pretty good about him playing on Sunday. If he does not, that could spell trouble for the Colts because, I talked about it yesterday. Colts run defense is not very good with Grover Stewart and DeForest Buckner. If you take one of them out, it's only going to get worse. That's just the very simple reality of it. So hopefully Grover Stewart is ready to go. He's a very important player on that Indianapolis Colts defense. Speaking of defense, Indiana, they're going on the road to play Oregon. And their defense is going to have to be really good. And their offense is going to have to be even better because Oregon's nasty on both sides of the football. And this is a real opportunity for Indiana. Coach Cignetti really likes to talk. Talked a lot last year. Talked a lot, in the preseason. And if you ask Coach Cignetti, he'll say that he talked a lot last year because he wanted to create excitement around the program. I don't know how much I really believe him when he says that. Listen to this video that CBS Sports put together of all of the great moments of Indiana football coach Cignetti talking about, or just running his mouth saying crazy things.
What are we, 10-0?
You are 10-0 for the first time in program history, Coach.
Not bad. There's a lot of skeptics. There's a lot of doubters. I get it, right? Haven't beat a top 25 team. Nebraska's 25th in the coach poll. We beat their 56-7.
How are we not right now seated for a home game?
Yeah, it's pretty simple. I win. Google me.
126 years of Indiana football. Best season in Indiana history. Number 1 out of 126.
We got our way of doing things, and, we kick ass and take names.
We figured we'd just adopt SEC scheduling philosophy. Some people don't like it. I'm more focused in on those 9 conference games.
We had to wake some people up and create some excitement. And after all, this is the entertainment business, too. We don't just beat top 25 teams. We beat the shit out of them. I know you guys have been waiting for me to say something crazy. That wasn't quite crazy.
Coach Cignetti. You gotta love him, man. He's awesome. We love Coach Cignetti. We love the fact that he runs his mouth. And like I said, if you were to ask Coach Cignetti, or someone did ask him the other day, about him running his mouth and all the things he says, and he said that he talked a lot last year and all that because he wanted to create excitement around the program. I don't believe him. I think he likes to talk trash. And let me walk that back. I believe him to a certain extent. I'm sure that part of why he said the things that he said were because he was trying to create excitement around the program. But there was plenty of excitement around Indiana football when they were on the road playing Notre Dame in the freaking college football playoff. And then, 2 hours before kickoff, he decides to go on the college game day set and, talk about how they crushed Nebraska 56-7. And then he says, we don't just beat top 25 teams. We beat the you-know-what out of them. So I don't know how much I buy. He was just saying things to create excitement around the program. Because when there was more excitement around the Indiana football program than there had ever been, he continued to say outlandish things. It's like, we don't beat top 25 teams. We just beat the you-know-what out of them. Even though we lost to Ohio State, a top 25 team, 38-15. So I don't know how much I buy that. With that being said, I still like him. All right. Let's just be honest. No one else likes him. Everyone else thinks he's, prideful, a little arrogant, a jerk. And that might be true, but he's Indiana fans jerks. And so so they like him, right? That's how it works when your head coach is like this. Like for me, I did not like John Calipari. And then Arkansas hired him. I'm like, cool, love him. Always did, And it's just because he's my guy now, right? So Coach Cignetti and the rest of the Indiana program have an opportunity to shut the rest of the college football world up and show that they have officially arrived. You say, well, Jonathan, what about the Illinois game? Beating Illinois is one thing. Going on the road and beating Oregon is something entirely different, right? I understand that they beat, Illinois by 53 points at home, but they followed that game up with a near loss on the road at Iowa. If Iowa's starting quarterback doesn't get banged up in that game, Indiana might lose that game. They didn't, shoulda, coulda, woulda, all that kind of stuff. Almost only counts, and horseshoes and hand grenades and all that stuff. But that's reality. And after last year, I don't really blame people for having questions about Indiana. They crushed Nebraska, who ended up not being as good as what everyone thought that they were going to be. They played a Michigan team at home, and if Michigan had me playing quarterback, Michigan probably wins that game. They couldn't complete a forward pass. They, pushed Indiana around for a lot of that game. And then they played Ohio State on the road, and they got blown out. And then they played Notre Dame on the road, and they got blown out. So I have no issue with people questioning Indiana. And they have an opportunity tomorrow at 3:30 on CBS to put all of those questions about their program to rest. They don't even have to win the game. Just don't get blown out. Lose the game by a touchdown. Don't get beat 38-15 and do the Coach Cignetti thing where you score late and hold the ball for a long time to make the game look closer than what it was. Like, I don't blame Ryan Day last year for running up the score on Indiana one bit, because that's exactly what Indiana did. They had like an 8-minute drive in the fourth quarter where they purposely chewed clock to make the game look like it was going to be 31-15. Oh, they only lost by 2 possessions. And then Ryan Day was like, absolutely not. You know, running back goes down at like the 2. And then the next play, Ryan Day's like, we're scoring. We're going to prove a point here. And so don't do that. Like make the game legitimately close. Don't make it look like the Notre Dame game last year where they scored 2 touchdowns in the final minute and 40 seconds to where everyone's like, oh, they only lost by 10, even though that game was over in the second quarter. I'll be honest. I don't think there's a chance that happens. I don't think there's a chance that Indiana hangs with Oregon tomorrow. I'll talk to Shehan Jeyarajah about it here in about 30 minutes. I think Oregon is going to win this game by at least 2 touchdowns. That's not a knock on Indiana. I'm in the minority on that opinion because the line has moved towards Indiana as the week has progressed. They opened up as, I think, 8.5-point dogs, 7.5 other places. They're now only a 6.5-point underdog. And once again, me expecting for Oregon to beat Indiana by more than 2 touchdowns is not a knock on Indiana. I think Indiana is better this year than they were last year. But, I talk about this all the time, the gap in college football is huge. Making the jump from being a, second-tier college football team like Indiana was last year to being in that top tier is incredibly difficult. We've seen Penn State try to make that jump for like a decade now, and they can't do it. It is extremely difficult to do. I think Indiana's better this year than they were last year, but they haven't improved enough to move from that second tier of college football to the top tier, where there's really only 3 teams every year. Say, well, Jonathan, like if they've gotten better, then what is the difference here? The difference is going to be the trenches. I think that the skill positions for Indiana and Oregon are very similar. Both teams have multiple good receivers. The only position group that I think Oregon definitively has better players at is the tight end room. Like Oregon's tight ends are nasty. But aside from that, receivers are similar. Both teams have a large stable of running backs. Both teams have great quarterbacks that are expected to be first-round picks. The skill positions are good. I like Oregon's corners. I like Indiana's corners. I like Indiana's linebackers. I like Oregon's linebackers. The difference is going to be the offensive and defensive lines. Oregon's only given up 1 sack all year. Indiana's given up 5 sacks, and 3 of their games came against Kennesaw State, Old Dominion, and Indiana State. They haven't even played an elite pass rush yet. And they're going to play one of the best pass rushes in the country tomorrow. How they go about blocking these edges, we had Dusty Hara, who covers Oregon football, on yesterday, and he went through it. These edges are nasty. Uyunglele is a freaking monster coming off the edge. Junior. Like, if he's the first edge taken this year, like, that wouldn't be the most surprising thing in the world to me. Tuioti, linebacker, 2.5 sacks on the year. Another guy who can get after the passer. They're like, the edges on this Oregon team are dominant, and I don't know how Indiana is going to go about blocking those guys. And while I do think that the Indiana defensive line is better, I don't think it's good enough to control the football game against this Oregon offensive line that has once again only given up 1 sack all year. And it's an Oregon team that just kind of runs the football at will. It's a team averaging over 6 yards to carry on the year. And they played a really good Penn State defense. Like I said, they've got like 7 running backs. It's kind of ridiculous. And then Dante Moore needs no introduction. The dude's, only the leader to win the Heisman. He's only thrown 14 touchdowns in, 5 games to 1 interception, might I add. He's only been sacked once. He's only completing 75% of his passes. And if you're not getting to that guy, then you're not beating Oregon. I think the difference in this game ends up being Oregon's ability to pressure Mendoza and Indiana's inability to pressure Dante Moore. And if you're not impacting Dante Moore, you're not going to go on the road to Eugene and beat Oregon. It's not going to happen. So, sorry, Indiana fans. I like Oregon in a big, big way tomorrow afternoon. I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm coming in here on Monday having to eat those words. But I just don't think that Indiana is quite yet on the level of the Ohio States, Oregons, and Miamis in terms of the trench play. That is the difference. And I am going to bet this game. And in 4 minutes, I'll give you all my bets for the upcoming weekend.
It may, one day, be a must-listen for sports enthusiasts.
Yeah, and monkeys might fly out of my butt.
Uh-oh.
The Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
Welcome back to the Real Jonathan Smith Show. Shehan Jeyarajah of CBS Sports is set to join the show coming up here in about 20 minutes to talk college football, preview Indiana versus Oregon. I'm going to give you my bets because I already previewed Indiana and Oregon. I already talked to Colts and Cardinals. I'll do it again, though. Don't you worry. Very excited to have Shehan on here in about 20 minutes or so. Thank you for tuning in, whether that's YouTube, Indy Sports Ticket, X _ Jonathan Smith, the Indy Sports Ticket app, or 1430 AM. Let's make some money, as I do every Friday. 5 NFL bets. Here we go. Broncos versus the Jets. I like the Broncos -6.5. I usually don't like betting the games that happen overseas, but I bet it last week. We took the Vikings, and it hit. And this week, we're taking the Broncos -6.5. If Justin Fields completes 10 passes against this Denver Broncos defense, then I will be surprised. The Jets fired Robert Saleh, a defensive-minded head coach, hired Aaron Glenn, a defensive-minded head coach, and the defense got worse. That is not a good sign for your new head coach. I think the Broncos win that game by double digits. I don't think it's close. I think Sean Payton, Bo Nix, Cortland Sutton, and J.K. Dobbins tear up that New York Jets defense, and I think that this Denver Broncos defense suffocates that New York Jets offense that just really struggles to complete any sort of passes with Justin Fields playing quarterback. So that's probably my favorite bet of the week. I love the Broncos -6.5 against the Jets overseas. That game kicks at 9:30 on Sunday morning. Next bet, I'm taking the Colts -7.5 at home against the Cardinals. Okay? Whether Kyler Murray plays or not, I like this bet. If Kyler Murray doesn't play, then I love the bet. The Cardinals offense has been bad all year. They can't run the football. And when you can't run the football and you're one-dimensional, you become significantly easier to stop. When you're one-dimensional and you can't run the football against this Colts secondary, then I like the Colts even more. And those offensive struggles will only get worse if Jacoby Brissett plays. And while their defense is good, because the Cardinals do have a good defense, even with all the injuries, they've been dealing with them all year, and they're still 4th in the NFL in points per game allowed. The Colts are rolling so well right now on offense. They are so incredibly efficient. I don't think there's a defense in the NFL capable of containing them. The Broncos gave up 29 points to this Colts offense that has gotten better in the red zone since that game. So I love the Colts -7.5 at home against an Arizona Cardinals team that may not have Kyler Murray. I like the Seahawks -1.5 on the road against the Jags. I know it's a long trip for Seattle. I know that Jacksonville's 4-1, but I do not believe that Trevor Lawrence can play as well as he did on Monday night in back-to-back games, especially against this Seattle Seahawks defense that is amongst the best in the NFL. Sam Darnold has done a great job at not turning the ball over. And while this Jacksonville Jaguars defense has had success, a lot of their success has happened because they forced 14 turnovers in 5 games. If Seattle just doesn't turn the football over, they're going to win this game. They can run the ball. Sam Darnold's playing so well right now. I love Seattle to go to Jacksonville and win and cover that 1.5 point spread. I don't like this next bet, but I do. I'm about to violate one of my rules. I'm taking the Lions +2.5 against the Chiefs. I never bet against Patrick Mahomes, especially when he's at home and he's getting less than a field goal. But the Lions have had the best offense in the NFL the last month. Sorry, Colts fans, that's just the truth. They have a better roster than the Chiefs on both sides of the football. I hate betting against Patrick Mahomes. I do. Especially in a game where it feels like they need to win. Because if they fall to 2-4, I know that Rashee Rice comes back. But 3-3 just feels entirely different than 2-4. The issue is the Lions are absolutely rolling. And the one thing that has kept the Chiefs from winning games, they don't have a pass rush. They don't have a pass rush. And you're not beating the Lions if you can't rush the passer. It's not happening. And the Chiefs don't have one right now. So unless Chris Jones finally decides to show up, I love the Lions plus 2.5 on the road at Arrowhead on Sunday Night Football. Final bet of the week, I'm taking the Bills minus 4.5 on the road against the Falcons. Falcons are very up and down. I'm nervous about this Bills run defense having to deal with Bijan Robinson. But I'm taking Josh Allen against that Atlanta Falcons defense. That Falcons defense is definitely better than it was last year. But I still kind of expect for the Bills to break 30. And I do expect for Michael Penix to make at least one mistake. So give me the Bills minus 4.5 against the Falcons. Now, time for my favorite bets of the week, the Kirk Cousins bets of the week. We do this every single week. We take a road team on the money line that is an underdog, a road underdog on the money line, because Kirk Cousins said this last year.
Walk into your trap, take over your trap. This is the line he would say. You go into someone else's stadium and you try to assert yourself.
Try to assert yourself, and that is exactly what I expect for the Detroit Lions to do. That's right. We're not just taking them plus 2.5. We're also going to bet them on the money line. Better roster, top to bottom. Good coaching staff. The coordinator hires have been very good, right? Week 1 against the Packers was a little rough, but since that moment, it's been better. Just has been. And so I really like them to go on the road and not only cover the 2.5 points, but to also win the game outright. That is your Kirk Cousins bet of the week. College football obviously starts tomorrow. And as always, I will give you bets for all of the big games in the world of college football. Ohio State, they're playing Illinois. Big noon kickoff is going to be there. Give me Ohio State minus 14.5. I don't know I just don't know how anyone's going to score against Ohio State unless you're Oregon or Miami. You have to have really good quarterback play and a really good offensive line if you want any sort of chance, and really good receivers. Like, you just have to be kind of loaded across the board. I don't expect for Ohio State to beat Illinois 63-10 like Indiana did, but I do expect them to have their way. Washington has an excellent offense, and they scored, 9 points against this Ohio State defense? I just don't know how Illinois is going to score enough points to keep this game close. Julian saying he got to open up the offense a bit against Minnesota. He looked pretty good. And I think as the year goes on, we're going to see more and more of that. And I think that's going to lead them to beating Illinois by at least 17 points. The other big game at noon, Alabama, they're playing Missouri. I'm taking Missouri plus 2.5. I have sat in this chair and I've defended Kalen DeBoer and I've defended Alabama football, something I never thought that I would do. I like Alabama as much as anybody else this year, but their defense hasn't been consistent. They didn't beat Vanderbilt because they just played excellent defense. No. They beat Vanderbilt because Vanderbilt turned the football over. And I think this game winds up being an offensive shootout, and it wouldn't surprise me in the slightest if Missouri won this football game. It is on the road. That's another reason why I'm taking Missouri. It is tough to win games on the road in college football. Give me the home underdog with a good quarterback and an explosive offense to give Alabama a run for their money. Wouldn't be surprised if Missouri won this game outright. Indiana versus Oregon. I'm taking Oregon minus 6.5. Absolutely. I can't believe the line has come down to 6.5. I don't know what people are seeing, but I will gladly take the extra point that has been given to me. The trenches will be the difference in this game. Indiana, they'll hold up, but I think that as the game progresses, we will slowly see Oregon kind of take control. I don't know how much pressure this Indiana front is going to be able to generate against Oregon's offensive line, and I don't know how this Indiana offensive line is going to hold up against a very good Oregon front four, especially out on the edges. So give me Oregon. I think, once again, the trenches are the difference. And if Oregon won this game by 2 touchdowns, I would not be surprised in the slightest. Oklahoma is getting 1.5 points against Texas, and I am 1,000% taking Oklahoma. Texas is only favored because John Mateer, Oklahoma starting quarterback, isn't going to play. There's all these reports that he's progressing quickly from his thumb surgery, and he went to Chipotle, and, some Chipotle guy was like, John's fine. And, there's all these reports like he might play or he might not, which is telling me that he's not going to play. I don't think he's going to play. And I also don't think it's going to matter. Arch Manning has struggled against the two good defenses that he's seen. He was bad against Ohio State, and he was bad against Florida. It's the reality of it. And Oklahoma's defense, not as good as Ohio State's, but it is better than Florida's. And I think Arch has another bad day where he really struggles to consistently complete passes. He'll make 2 or 3 throws that are like, oh, that was impressive. But outside of that, I think it's another rough day for Arch, and Oklahoma wins this game outright because of their defense. Also, the backup quarterback for Oklahoma, I'm blanking on his name. He started a lot of games for Oklahoma last year, and the dude can the dude can flat out play. He can flat out play. And, he's a former 4-star guy. He's a legacy player. His dad played defensive back at Oklahoma. I can apparently remember everything about him except for his name. I'm going to pull it up here right now, though. His name is Hawkins. Michael Hawkins Jr., very athletic kid. Okay, he can make plays with his legs. I understand that this Texas defense is good, but they just gave up 29 points to DJ Lagway in Florida, who really struggled offensively until that game. So Oklahoma plus 1.5 in that one. Florida, I'm taking them plus 7.5 on Texas A&M. As I just said, that Florida defense, very good. It's been good all year. They finally got DJ Lagway to play well, and they beat Texas. Now, this game's a little bit different. They're going on the road. They're going to Texas A&M at Allen Field. It's a very tough place to go win. But if they get the version of DJ Lagway that they got last week, that version of Lagway is better than Marcel Reed, the starting quarterback at Texas A&M. I think both teams play great defense, but I'm going to take the better quarterback to cover those 7.5 points. Last game of the week that I'm going to bet, not because it's a big game, but just because the line's too good to pass on. Georgia only getting 3.5 on the road against Auburn. Give me Georgia minus 3.5. Auburn is going to find a way to lose this game. That is going to be the story of Auburn this year, and then Hugh Freeze is going to get fired. Jackson Arnold isn't any better than he was last year at Oklahoma, where he got benched. I think he's going to make a couple mistakes against this Georgia defense. Gunnar Stockton's a gamer. He makes 3 or 4 more plays than Jackson Arnold, and Georgia wins this game by a touchdown. It's an awesome slate this week in college football. Shehan Jeyarajah is the guy to talk to about all these games, and he's joining the show coming up at 11 o'clock.
Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
Hour number 2 getting underway here on the Real Jonathan Smith Show. Thank you for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in, whether that's YouTube, X, Indy Sports Ticket app, 1430 AM. No matter how you're listening, it is greatly, greatly appreciated. I'm joined now by Shehan Jeyarajah of CBS Sports. Does a great job covering college football for them. Shehan, how are you, man?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me.
Of course. Shehan, it's really weird. When I took this job, I was like, I need to find as many NFL contacts as I can because I'm going to be talking a lot of Colts. And I wasn't really worried about the college football stuff because of the history of Indiana, but Coach Cignetti has shown up. He's turned the program around. With that being said, I don't think he's turned it around enough for them to go on the road to Oregon and win. What are kind of your thoughts on this game tomorrow?
Yeah, this is a huge opportunity for this program. I mean, I think that you look back last year, of course, they managed to really decimate the teams that couldn't hang with them. But once they played against the elite of the elite, they just weren't able to hang. And this is the first moment where we figure out, has that changed this year? Now, some things that I really like, I think that they've actually developed a lot in the trenches, even compared to last year. I think that this is a program and a team that is playing at an incredibly high level on defense. But, I mean, Oregon is a different kind of challenge. We've watched what they went on the road and did to Penn State, and I'm curious to see if they're able to do it again, this time at home.
I am too. I'm so glad that you think that the Oregon win over Penn State is a good win. Like, they lost to UCLA. Everyone's like, are they even good? I'm like, yeah. Did you watch them play Oregon? They're absolutely really good. So it is a little bit different. I agree with everything that you said. Like, I think Indiana's better in the trenches last year or this year compared to last year. But I call it the gap. I just think that the difference between the 3 best teams in college football, and Oregon is obviously one of them, and everyone else, every year for like the last decade or so, it seems to be rather large. And so even while Indiana is better in the trenches this year, and I really like their skill guys, I still think that there's a big enough difference in this game between Oregon and Indiana for Oregon to kind of pull away late and win by double digits. What is your expectation in terms of the outcome of the game?
Yeah, it's a huge question for sure. I think that, when we compare this Indiana team this year versus last year, one piece is going to be how do they hold up on the offensive line especially. And I think that Indiana actually will hang okay. I don't think that this is going to go, for example, like maybe that Notre Dame game did last year where they really got bullied, or even if you look at some of the matches they had against top 10 teams. So I think that the offense will actually be able to hang okay. Where I really run into trouble is with the defense. I think that just Oregon is so good at every level of the offense right now. Obviously, they brought in 2 of the top transfers of the offseason, Emmanuel Pregnon at left guard, and of course, Isaiah World at left tackle. They're so big and physical. They've got like 6 running backs. They just come at you in waves. They've got great receivers. They've got a quarterback in Dante Moore who's playing at an incredibly high level. And that's where I'm curious. Can Indiana get pressure on this Oregon team with just base pressure, right? Will they have to blitz? Will they have to take guys out of coverage? That's where I really run into trouble. So I think that this actually might be a little bit of a higher scoring game than people expect. Not into the 30s or 40s necessarily, but I think that these teams will be able to move the ball. The question is, can Indiana get Oregon off the field, or are they going to be on the field for 35 plus minutes?
Joined by Shehan Jeyarajah of CBS Sports, where he does an excellent job covering the world of college football. You can read all the stuff over at cbssports.com. You can follow him on TikTok as well, which is great. So for Indiana in this game, I think that in order for them to win, it's got to be a big day from Mendoza. I think the reason why I'm really excited to watch this game is, like, you can make a real argument that Dante Moore and Fernando Mendoza are the 2 best quarterbacks in college football. What is kind of the difference, but like, who do you like more, and what is the difference between the 2?
Well, I think the biggest difference that you have to point to, right, is that these are 2 quarterbacks that came into college football with wildly different pedigrees. Dante Moore, a top 5 recruit in the country, initially commits to UCLA, transfers to Oregon, and grows and learns behind Dillon Gabriel. And I think that you see that talent on display and you see that maturity on display. Well, for Fernando Mendoza, it's been more of an upward climb. He was initially committed to Yale out of high school, ultimately enrolls at Cal, wins the starting job after they have some turnover at that position last year, and plays really well. But I think that in this structure at Indiana, he has handled himself really well. And the thing that I like about Mendoza in this game is that I am a lot more comfortable because of his experiences at Cal with Mendoza out of structure. I think that Moore has been incredible inside of structure, and Oregon's given him a lot of structure. I think that what's going to be interesting is if Indiana is able to get some pressure on Dante Moore, again, we haven't really seen him have to deal with that situation quite to the same extent. Whereas for Fernando Mendoza, I mean, he is no stranger to making things happen out of nothing. So that's, I think, a dynamic that I'm really interested to see. I mean, Dante Moore's physical skills are kind of like textbook, and Mendoza is somebody more who kind of makes stuff happen. And I'm curious to see whether either team is able to push them out of their comfort zone.
I agree. Joined by Shehan Jeyarajah of CBS Sports, where he does a great job covering college football. And that's an interesting thing for Indiana fans, because I think that when Mendoza committed to Indiana, everyone read the articles and they heard all the talking heads talk about Mendoza, and they were really excited. And they weren't excited because they were staying up till midnight to watch, a 6-6 Cal team play. And what's been really interesting to start the year is Mendoza hasn't really had to ad-lib very much. We saw it a little bit against Iowa. And I think this is going to be the first time where we see him kind of scrambling around and broken down pockets, running away from Uyunglele, who's one of the best edges in all of college football. And I'm so excited to see that. And as you mentioned, the offensive line for Oregon, that's where I think the difference is going to be. They went on the road to Penn State, and with that game in the mix, Dante Moore's only been sacked once all year, which is just bizarre. So I'm really excited to kind of see that kind of push and pull throughout the game. I did want to ask you, I feel like as soon as teams have any sort of success, the coordinators leave. Indiana was good for a year, and their offensive coordinator left. I believe did he go to UCLA? I don't remember where he went. But
he was at UCLA for a minute and then got let go. Yes.
Okay. Meanwhile, Dan Lanning just keeps his coordinators despite winning a whole bunch of games every year. How has Oregon been able to do that?
Well, it's a couple things. One, this is very much the process of culmination, right? They understand, look, we were number one in the country last year. We feel like we have an opportunity to grow even from that and win a national championship. And when you have those opportunities, the type of jobs that you leave for become far less common, right? If you're not going to necessarily leave being the offensive coordinator of a juggernaut so you can take over at Western Kentucky or whatever, right? So it changes the dynamics quite a bit when you know that you don't have to leave and that you are very well compensated. I'd make the comparison to Clemson under Dabo Swinney, where Brent Venables doesn't leave until he gets the Oklahoma job. And I think it's a similar situation here. Now, what I also will say is that I think that this is the year where you start to see that happen. One, because I think Oregon is good enough to win the national championship or at least have a chance. Two, when I look at their offensive coordinator, defense coordinator, and I'll also point out recruiting coordinator, I think that all three of those guys are going to be up for head coaching jobs. Will Stein, considered one of the best offensive minds in the country. Tosh Lapoy, somebody who's been in college football for a long time, considered an elite recruiter, ties to Southern California. And Rashad Samples, that running backs coach and recruiting coordinator, he's done a great job of getting them into Texas, especially. They don't land DeCorian Moore, for example, without him. All three of those guys, in my opinion, are going to be up for head coaching jobs in 2026. Now, does that mean that they'll definitely leave? No, I think that Stein is probably very likely to leave for a head coaching job, but they'll all have opportunities.
Okay, sounds good. Joined by Shehan Jeyarajah of CBS Sports, trying to get you ready for Oregon and Indiana. And on your Will Stein note, I think Will Stein would look great and some Arkansas red. Just saying. We'll see. I'm going to ask you about that at some point. So I had Dusty Hara. I don't know if you know who that is. He's the sideline reporter for Oregon. He does a great job of covering Oregon football. And I asked him this yesterday, and I'm curious your take on this as well. it's a bit of a morbid question, so I apologize for that. But Phil Knight's 87 years old, and he donates a lot of money to Oregon football. What do you think Oregon football looks like after he passes at some point? Hopefully not soon, but
Yeah. Well, I mean, no, it's like you said, when you're 87, you can ask a reasonable question. I mean, Sister Jean, right, just passed yesterday at 106.
106.
It's sad, also not a surprise, right? And so, I think that it's twofold, right? One, I'll point to sort of the downside, right? And I'll point to Oklahoma State after T. Boone Pickens dies. I don't think it's a coincidence that Oklahoma State after 2019 took a notable step back as a program. Now, I think that some of that also has to do with the NIL era and Mike Gundy's shortcomings, but it was a real dynamic for sure. How different is it if T-Boone's able to spend all his money on recruits in 2022? The other piece, though, is that I think that Oregon has built something sustainable, both in terms of financing and also in terms of kind of their organization, right? Like Oregon is now a legitimate power. You kind of have to consider them in the mold of maybe like a Clemson, right? Where, yeah, not a historic power, but one who's built up something, who has the coach in place, has the money in place. They have all the resources together to where they're going to be treated differently than some of the other programs that have historically been on their level. And the other piece too, obviously I'm not by any means in these conversations. I'm sure that Oregon and athletic director Rob Mullins and Nike and Phil Knight have created sort of a long-term succession plan. I know that, obviously Phil Knight's sons aren't as into sports as he was, but they also understand the value of Oregon and how much it means to their dad. So I don't think by any means it's going to be a stark drop-off, but again, it's easy to say, and it's much easier to adjust to the changing realities when the guy himself is there.
Okay, yeah, that's what Dusty hinted at yesterday. And look, like Phil Knight, he built a multi-billion-dollar company, and you don't do that if you don't know how to plan for the future. So I'm sure that they've got something going on just to kind of ensure success at some point. Joined by Shehan Jeyarajah, who does a great job of covering college football. You can read all of his articles over at cbssports.com. It is an awesome slate. And so I just want to kind of ask you about some of these other games. I know you went last year. Are you going to the Red River rivalry on Saturday?
Yes, I will be there. And I'll also be at North Texas, South Florida tonight. So pulling my doubleheader.
Oh, let's go. That's awesome. All right. Okay, I just want to get this out of the way. John Mateer's not playing. I'm seeing all these reports where it's like he might play, and I'm like, he's not playing. It's not happening. With that being said, Oklahoma only a 1.5 underdog in this one. Just with what we've seen from Arch Manning, I don't know how he finds success against this OU defense. What are you kind of expecting in this game?
Well, I will start by saying John Mateer was upgraded to probable last night on the SEC injury report. So, but I will also say this. I am pretty sure he's going to be active for the game. That doesn't necessarily mean he's going to start. I think, a big part of it with the hand injury is going to be, one, does he have the grip strength? That's been my primary concern through all of this. Because again, it's not even just fixing the broken bone. It's you had your hand cut open. How quickly can you recover from that? The other piece, though, too, is just pain management. That's something that I certainly think he'll be able to handle okay. So we'll be interested. I'll certainly be out there early to keep an eye on warm-ups and see how he's looking. But I think that, when you talk about Arch versus Oklahoma defense, I mean, we saw the issues that they had against Florida. This Oklahoma defense is better everywhere compared to what Florida brings to the table. And now I will say as well, Arch, I think, actually looked pretty good in the second half of that Florida game. He made some big time plays. He maneuvered in the pocket. I think the game is starting to slow down for him, but this is an Oklahoma defense that had 9 sacks against Jackson Arnold the last time that they played an SEC opponent. Like, this is a really, really good defensive line against a Texas offensive line that's kind of become the story in all the wrong ways. So I think that this is going to be a tough game for Texas to match up. And the question is it a tough game for Oklahoma to match up in? If Michael Hawkins is the quarterback out there, their backup who started last week against Kent State, I don't know that they're going to be able to move the ball at a very high level. So I would not be surprised whatsoever if Mateer isn't 100%, if this ends up being a very, very ugly game that hinges on maybe even a defensive score.
I like Oklahoma in a really ugly game. I love that Oklahoma team, by the way. Like if they won the SEC,
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised at all. Staying in the SEC, Alabama's going on the road to Missouri. Missouri can score. Alabama's defense is talented, but hasn't been super consistent. What are you kind of expecting in that game?
I think for me, it's a question very simply of which pass rush gets home. I think that, Alabama, their offensive line has been a little inconsistent, but, Missouri has some of the best pass rushers in the country. If they can get to Ty Simpson, that changes this game a lot, but the same goes the other way. I think that Alabama's defensive line might be able to cause a lot of problems against Missouri's offensive line. You like having a dual threat quarterback in Bo Pribula who can maybe make the game just a little bit easier. And Ahmad Hardy is the best running back in the country right now. But, even though he's so good after contact, there's going to be a lot of contact, I think, early in this game for Alabama's defensive line. So it's really going to be a question of, all right, which offensive line can hold up well enough? Because I think that there are so many offensive playmakers. And here's reality, too. I don't think that Missouri's DBs can hang for 4 quarters with Alabama's wide receivers. And that's where I think ultimately the game is going to be won.
Okay. All right. I like it because Shehan, I've been here defending Alabama and Kalen DeBoer all year. And people were just like, oh, they're not the same. It's like, yeah, they're not the same. Nick Saban isn't the head coach anymore. But I still really like this Alabama team. So I'm glad that you like them on Saturday. Ohio State, they're playing on the road at Illinois. Everyone's view of Penn State has shifted after they lost to UCLA. And because of that, I know some people's view of Oregon has moved around a little bit. Has your view of Ohio State changed at all because Texas just hasn't been as good as what everyone expected before the year started?
A little bit, I'd say. I think that, for me, I really like this defense. I still think that, they're susceptible in a few places, but they also did a great job against a Washington team that I still think has a really good case of having the best quarterback, running back, wide receiver combo in the Big Ten. Offensively, the thing that's, I think, so freaky about Ohio State to this point is I don't really think that they've let their passing game try anything to this point. They have kept Julian Sain under lock and key, and so he's right now leading the nation in completion percentage. I think there's a whole nother level that they have available to them if they choose to open it up at some point with the receivers that they have and with the level that Sain's playing at. So I think that this is, you mentioned kind of that top 3 group in college football right now. I think that Ohio State is clearly among Oregon and Miami in that top group right now. I think it's going to be interesting, though, because, again, when you lose that Texas game as a quality result, I think that it does bring up the question of, is this team number 1? Are they number 2 or number 3? But they're clearly one of those 3.
I agree. I had him third. I want to go back to something that you said, though. Once again, joined by Shehan Jeyarajah, who covers college football for CBS Sports. You can read his stuff at cbssports.com. I think Ohio State has the best defense in college football. You mentioned that you feel like they're susceptible in a couple areas. What are those areas?
Yeah, I think that this is a defensive line that's still a little bit figuring it out. Now, the emergence of Caden Curry, I think, has been huge for this team. But, again, I think that we haven't necessarily seen them to this point against a particularly good offensive line. So that's something that I'm going to be keeping an eye on. I think that they're not quite as good at corner this year, though obviously fantastic at safety. But by the same deal, I think that they might be better at linebacker this year with the emergence of Arvell Reese. So, it's kind of, I think there's a couple places that I'm waiting for them to be stress tested a little bit. But like you said, they also might be the best defense in the country.
Yeah. Does Illinois have any chance against them tomorrow?
After I watched that Indiana-Illinois game, I am very, very concerned about Illinois hanging against the best of the best. So I think that Ohio State is going to be pretty relentless. I think they put it away early.
Yeah, that's how I feel about it as well. 2 more games that I want to ask you about. Florida, they're playing A&M, and I kind of like Florida in the game just because DJ Lagway finally played not terribly against Texas, and they won. I get going on the road to A&M is very different than playing at home. A lot of people seem to really love this A&M team. I'm a little held up on Marcel Reed. Like, I like Marcel Reed, just not as much as the other quarterbacks kind of in that A&M tier of like somewhere between the 4th and 10th best team in the country. What are your thoughts on A&M, just kind of like from a big picture standpoint, and what do you expect from Florida in this game?
Well, I don't think that necessarily you need to be in love with Marcel Reed. I think that, to me, the question is more, are you in love with Mario Craver and Casey Concepcion at receiver? And I think those guys are just unbelievable to this point. I agree. There's going to be moments where Marcel Reed, I think, is lackluster. I think he's still developing to a certain extent. But, I also have seen development. I mean, I watched him in person a couple times last year, and the sort of development in footwork especially is something that stands out to me. So I agree. He's not like a top tier quarterback by any means, but I think that this can be a top tier passing game with some of the weapons that they have. And to me, I think when you compare this A&M team to the Texas team that got bullied last weekend, it's going to come down to one thing, and that's pass rush. Cassius Howell on the defensive line has been a borderline All-American for Texas A&M to this point. I think he has 5.5 sacks through the first couple of weeks of the year. And I think that when DJ Lagway's under pressure, he is not the same player. Texas wasn't able to get much any pressure on him last week, which is why he was able to make stuff happen. So I ultimately think that Texas A&M pulls away in this game, but the emergence of Dallas Wilson and Burnell Brown at receiver for Florida is a huge deal. And even if not in this game, I think that they have the potential to maybe flip this season for Florida.
Okay. Joined by Shehan Jeyarajah, who does a great job covering college football over at CBSSports.com, where you can read all of his stuff. I hope they turn it around, because I would like for Billy Napier to be employed for just one more season. There's also a world, where Hugh Freeze gets fired at some point at Auburn. They are only 3.5-point underdogs against Georgia. Like, I get that the game's at home. That line still feels a little small to me. What is it that people like about Auburn? Or is this more of an Auburn thing, or is this more of Georgia isn't as good as maybe as everyone else thinks that they are?
I think it's a combination of that. Georgia has clearly taken a step back defensively, mixed with the fact that Auburn desperately needs this game. And on top of that, I mean, you look at the games at Jordan-Hare the past couple of years between Georgia and Auburn, and they've been surprisingly close, even when Auburn has been pretty bad. Now, here's the issue. There is a matchup that I love for Auburn in this game, and it's the wide receivers against a Georgia passing defense that, frankly, has been very disappointing. They're 13th right now out of 16 in the SEC in passing defense. But the issue is, I don't know if the quarterback's going to be able to get those receivers the ball. That's been a huge issue for Jackson Arnold through the first couple of weeks. I think that Georgia's going to maul this Auburn offensive line. And while I'm not in love with Georgia's offense either, we've started to see some emergence of that running game that honestly, when you look at Georgia's kind of half a step back from their title teams, the running game has been a huge part of that. I think that they're going to be able to mostly maul Auburn in the running game and make the game relatively easy. So, look, if Jackson Arnold plays the game of his life, certainly I think that Auburn is capable of competing, especially with their passing game. But I just have not seen anything at this point to make me think that that's possible.
Okay. Joined by Shehan Jeyarajah, who does a great job covering college football over at CBSSports.com. So my boss gave me advice when I first started working here, and he was like, I said I would never do something. And he said, Jonathan, never is a very long time, which is true. And it's really kind of changed my perspective on things. And like, if I had never heard that, I would have said that there's no chance whatsoever for Indiana to go to Oregon and win. But to be fair, I also said that there's no chance that Bobby Petrino would ever be the head coach at Arkansas again. What is just kind of your perspective of Arkansas and bringing Bobby Petrino back, even on just this interim basis?
Yeah, I think that there are real efforts behind the scenes to get Petrino that head job. I think that there are boosters who absolutely want it, but I also think that he has to win 4 of his last 7 games and make a bowl game for it to happen. And I'll tell you what, 1, because, with this roster, and 2, because I don't think that Bobby Petrino is a great coach at this point. I don't think that's all that likely. I think that I think that Arkansas is going to go into this last little stretch with a lot of optimism. I think that they're going to throw some stuff out there in these games, including against Tennessee this week, to try to make some stuff happen, and then they're just going to get bullied. So I don't think it's very likely that he ultimately has a chance to become the head coach. But again, there are people there who, look, the reality of the situation is, and you know this well, he was let go after one of the most successful seasons of the modern era at Arkansas, and everybody mentally has been trying to get back to that point. Well, I don't think it's going to happen here, and ultimately, I think they go a different direction.
I agree, and my evidence would be what happened to Louisville when they rehired him. No,
Yep.
They had Lamar Jackson, and that was really the only success that they had. Last thing for Shehan, and I will let you go. So I am on a journey of watching Arkansas play in every SEC stadium. I'm going to Neyland tomorrow. Have you been? If you have, what is it like, and what are like the can't miss things about it?
I actually haven't been to Neyland, but I've heard that it's one of the most incredible atmospheres. I talked to a bunch of Oklahoma friends when they went back in, I believe it was 2015, the big Baker Mayfield comeback game, and they say it's just one of the most unbelievable environments that they've ever been to. It's just like it's one of those places, right, where like people just come from all over. It's the team of the state, and people, I actually have been to a Tennessee atmosphere. It was actually not at Tennessee, but you get to see all the like RVs and stuff parked around the stadium and all that. It's a really cool, unique scene. I think that you're gonna love it.
I'm excited. It's kind of nice that Arkansas is bad because I don't have to worry about them like winning the game. I can just enjoy myself. But I'm excited. I was talking to the Bear from Fox, and he was like, Jonathan, it's the third best stadium that I've been to. I was like, that's very high praise. So I'm excited. Shehan, I hope you have a great time tonight. Which game are you at tonight again?
I'm at North Texas versus South Florida. Maybe some playoff implications on the line in the American.
Yeah, I'm like the American. It's got a couple of really good teams, which is really fun. The group of five stuff this year is interesting because I really like UNLV. They're obviously really good with Dan Mullen. Memphis is obviously undefeated. South Florida, I think, has the best wins of all the group of five teams. So, like you said, really big game tonight. And then I know you said you're going to Oklahoma and Texas. So I hope you have a great time tonight, man, and a really good time on Saturday.
Thank you guys for having me.
You got it. That is Shehan Jeyarajah. You can check him out on X at Shehan Jeyarajah. Does a great job covering college football, and he'll do a great job covering those games tonight. I really got to pee in 4 minutes. The Colts play host to the Cardinals on Sunday. My thoughts on why they have to win that game.
Maybe. The Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
What's going on? Welcome back to the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Thank you for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in, whether that's YouTube, Indy Sports Ticket. If you want to head over there and subscribe, maybe you're watching on X__Jonathan Smith, to follow me there and watch the show there. You can also listen on that Indy Sports Ticket app, which you can download wherever you find your apps. Big thanks to Shehan Jeyarajah for joining me in that last segment. Did a great job, as he always does. And thank you for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in, whether that's YouTube, Indy Sports Ticket. If you want to head over there and subscribe, maybe you're watching on X__Jonathan Smith, to follow me there and watch the show there. And of course, Indy Sports Ticket app and 1430 AM if you're driving around in your car listening to the show. The Indianapolis Colts play host to the Arizona Cardinals. And the biggest thing in this game is the injuries. That's what it is. The Colts might be missing DeForest Buckner, who didn't practice yesterday after being a full participant on Wednesday. And the Arizona Cardinals might be missing, they might be missing Kyler Murray, who didn't practice on Wednesday or yesterday. He hurt his foot in the third quarter against the Tennessee Titans, and he did play in the fourth quarter. But Kyler Murray likes to scramble. He likes to run around. He didn't do that once in the fourth quarter. 0 rushing attempts for him. And that was a red flag, that he wasn't fully healthy in that game, in that fourth quarter. And if he doesn't play, then the Colts have to win, even if DeForest Buckner doesn't. And DeForest Buckner is an incredibly important piece of this Colts team. This Colts run defense is bad. If he wasn't playing, it would be even worse. It would go from a below average run defense, which is what it's been so far this year, to one of the worst in football. Okay, so hopefully he plays, because I don't know how much they're going to need him, because let me just tell you, this Cardinals run defense is brutal. It's absolutely brutal. It is no good whatsoever. So Grover Stewart, hopefully he plays, but I don't think the Colts necessarily need him in this game like they do in other ones. And if Kyler Murray's out, then this should be an easy victory for the Indianapolis Colts. And maybe not easy, because, the Cardinals do have pros, but it's a game that the Colts should win, and they need to win if they want the 1 seed. That's right, the 1 seed in the AFC. That is in play for the Indianapolis Colts, but they have to win games like this one if they want that to actually come true. More on that in 4 minutes.
If it's in today's sports world, it's here. The real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
Welcome back to the real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. Thank you for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in, whether that's YouTube, Indy Sports Ticket. If you want to head over there and subscribe, maybe you're watching the show on X__Jonathan Smith to follow me there and watch the show there. You can also listen on that Indy Sports Ticket app or 1430 AM. You know, if you're in the if you're in the Indianapolis area. The weekend, it is almost here, and the Colts have an opportunity to continue winning football games on Sunday when they play host to the Arizona Cardinals. And this is a game that they should absolutely win. They are the better team, and they are definitely the better team, and they should definitely win this game. If Kyler Murray isn't playing, he didn't practice yesterday for the second time this week. He didn't practice on Wednesday. And if he doesn't play, then this is a game that the Colts absolutely have to win, because it's not like they're playing, the Vikings, who have Kevin O'Connell as their head coach and has proven that he can win games, with a backup quarterback. It's not like they're playing the 49ers, where Kyle Shanahan has proven that he can win games with any quarterback. They're playing Jonathan Gannon, who's the head coach of the Cardinals, who is a defensive-minded guy that isn't going to be able to elevate his quarterback with his play calling. The Cardinals offensive coordinator, he's had Kyler Murray all year, and their offense hasn't been outstanding. They've struggled offensively with Kyler Murray at quarterback. Jacoby Brissett is a high-end backup in the NFL, but he's still a backup in the NFL. And I don't expect for the Cardinals offense to get better because they're playing Jacoby Brissett instead of, former number 1 overall pick Kyler Murray. Okay, Jacoby Brissett's been a backup for a long time. Spent a lot of time here in Indianapolis. Didn't go very well. He was the starter in 2019, the year that Andrew Luck retired. He went 7-8 as the starter that year. And outside of that year, even that year included, it just hasn't been very good. 2017, started 15 games for the Colts, went 4-11 in those games. Obviously, like I said, 2019, 7-8. Struggled to complete 60% of his passes both of those seasons. And so it's hard to have faith in the Cardinals and their ability to come in here and win without Kyler Murray playing quarterback for them. Okay, and it doesn't look like he's going to play. We're obviously going to find out a little bit more today. If he doesn't practice today, then we're probably going to get Jacoby Brissett, which is a big deal for the Colts, because if he plays, this becomes a must-win game for the Colts. You're playing a backup quarterback. You're playing a Cardinals team that can't really run the football. Both of their 2 best running backs aren't playing. They don't have a player averaging over 40 rushing yards per game. Their leading rusher on the year is Kyler Murray. I mean, seriously, if it's that and a backup quarterback, then come on now. Okay, this should be a game filled with 3rd and longs for Jacoby Brissett. That should be a winning recipe for the Indianapolis Colts. Okay, we are past the point with the Colts, and this is a good thing. Just kind of the evolution of expectations for the Indianapolis Colts this year has actually been something really fun to track. So we come into the year and it's like, man, can they get to 10 wins? Grab the 6th seed in the wild card game, and and then the Colts started 2-0, and it's like, maybe they can win this division. The Texans aren't very good, and then they started 3-0, and it's like, yeah, they're definitely going to win this division. And I get it. The Jags are 4-1 as well. There's a difference, though. The Colts are significantly more consistent than the Jacksonville Jaguars. So I really like the Colts to win the AFC South. And so it's gone from maybe they can make the playoffs as a wild card to they should win their division. And now for me, it's the Indianapolis Colts should compete for the 1 seed in the AFC. Because when you look at just, the rest of the NFL or the rest of the AFC in the standings, the Colts are 4-1, and they are legitimately good. The Jags are 4-1, but like I said, there are some clear inconsistencies on the offense for them, and that makes me like the Colts even more to win the AFC South. And then you have the Bills, who are 4-1. The Steelers are 3-1, but if you've seen them play, then you know why no one is taking them seriously. You know why they're not even the favorite to win their division. It's the Ravens, who are 1-4. It's the reality of it right now. So it seems like it's going to be the Colts or the Bills with the 1 seed, right? Because the Patriots are 3-2, but they're not even going to win their division. The Broncos are 3-2, but they're in a pretty tough division. They currently would lose the tiebreaker to the Colts because the Colts won that game. That could be a game that a couple months from now we're looking back on like, man, that leveraging penalty was even bigger than we realized in the moment. So the Colts, like I said, have a legitimate chance to have the 1 seed and to once again not play on Wild Card Weekend. But this time it would be for a great reason. But they have to win games like these against the Cardinals in order to beat out a very good Buffalo Bills team for that 1 seed. Because both teams, both the Bills and the Colts, have very easy schedules. That's just the very simple reality of it right now. Like when you run through the Colts schedule, there's a lot of games that you expect for them to win starting Sunday. They should beat the Cardinals. They're at the Chargers. We'll see how healthy they are. If Joe Alt isn't playing in that game, though, then it's going to be hard not to like the Colts in that game, even though it's on the road. They should beat the Titans. They should win at the Steelers. They should beat Atlanta in Germany in Week 10. At Kansas City, going to be a very, very tough game for them to win. And then they get the Texans at home. That Texans offensive line is horrific. It's a game that the Colts should win. And then they're at the Jacksonville Jaguars in Week 14. That game, you could argue it's the toughest game left on their schedule because they haven't won on the road at Jacksonville in forever. And then they're at Seattle. That game is incredibly tough. San Francisco at home is going to be winnable. Jacksonville at home is going to be very winnable. And then at Houston is very winnable as well. So like I said, there are a lot of very winnable games left for the Colts in their season. That's where we're at with them right now. And then you compare that to the Bills' schedule. I think for the Colts, there's like 3 games that if they lost, I wouldn't be surprised, and that'd put them at 13-4 on the season. And the Bills, very similarly, very easy schedule where you expect for them to win a lot of these games. Monday night, they're at Atlanta. I fully expect for them to win that game. They're one of my 5 bets for the week. I like them -4.5 on the road, Monday Night Football. And then they have their bye week. And then they're at Carolina. That's a game that they should win. And then they get the Chiefs at home. That's a tough game, but the game's at home. And then they're at Miami. They should win that game. And then they get the Buccaneers at home. Like, that game will be tough because I think the Buccaneers are really good. But the game's at home. And then they're at the Texans, a game that they should win. And then they're at the Steelers, a game that they should win. I understand that those games are on the road, but the Bills are just significantly better than both of those teams. And then they get the Bengals at home. I know that the Bengals went and got Joe Flacco, but come on now. He's not going on the road in December to the Bills and winning. It's not happening. And then they're at New England. I get that New England beat them the other night, but I don't think New England's going to sweep Buffalo. I that would be shocking. And then they're at Cleveland. That's a game that they should win. And then they get the Eagles at home, a team that is in just a really weird spot right now, losing last night by 17 to the Giants. That was weird. And then they close the year with the Jets. Like, there's 2 games on there where I'm like, yeah, they could legitimately lose those games. And that's Kansas City at home and Tampa Bay at home. Every other game feels like a game that they should absolutely win. Like, they're going to be favored, barring any injuries, in every game going forward. And if it's the Bills and the Colts at the top of the AFC, fighting for that 1 seed, fighting for that first round bye, it's going to come down to which teams avoid dumb losses. And losing to a backup quarterback at home when you're extremely healthy, like the Colts are right now, would classify as a dumb loss. And after the win last week against the Raiders, 40-6, if Kyler Murray doesn't play, I would be very surprised if the Indianapolis Colts lost this game. This team feels and is so different from the teams from the last few years. They seem like the kind of team to take care of business in games that they should take care of business in. Cam Bynum has come in to that defense, and he's just kind of changed everything. You know, he has this very infectious personality, and apparently he works his butt off. Daniel Jones has come in, and he's now leading this offense, and he's a guy who apparently watches film all the time and works his butt off. And when you have guys like that, then you win games like this. You win the games that you should win. They're at home against a bad offense that probably isn't going to have their starting quarterback. The line's 7.5. You should take the Colts, and you should feel good about it whether Kyler Murray plays or not. The Indiana game, however, someone just threw in the chat, shout out to Roswell, that there's apparently a 70% chance of rain in the Indiana-Oregon game. That is great news for Indiana. Because if this was on like a clear 73-degree day, no weather impacting the game or anything like that, I mean, you got to love Oregon. Because they're just simply the better football team. Better players. Kurt Cignetti's a great coach. Dan Lanning, he's one of the best coaches in the sport right now. So these are two really good coaches, but Dan Lanning has better players. It's just the reality of it, especially in the trenches. This is a real opportunity for Indiana on Saturday, tomorrow at 3:30, to kind of prove that they're better than they were last year. You know, last year they beat all the bad teams, got housed by Ohio State, Notre Dame, and really struggled with Michigan at home. This year, they played an Illinois team that was good, and they beat them by 53. I don't even think Ohio State is going to do that on Saturday. The difference in this game, though, is going to be the trenches. I think the skill positions for Indiana and Oregon are very comparable at every spot, except for tight end. The tight ends that Oregon have they're all monsters. But aside from that, there's not much of a difference. Like, both teams have good wide receivers. Both teams have a stable of running backs. Both teams have quarterbacks that are expected to be drafted in the first round. If Dante Moore and Fernando Mendoza were the first two quarterbacks off the board in the 2026 NFL draft, I don't think that would surprise anybody. I don't think it would surprise anybody. And so to me, the difference is going to be the trenches. Oregon's given up 1 sack all year. Indiana's given up 5, and they've played 3 games against Old Dominion, Kennesaw State, and Indiana State. That is going to be the difference in the game. I think that Oregon's edge rushers and pass rush in general is going to do a great job of making life difficult on Fernando Mendoza. With that being said, Fernando Mendoza played at Cal and ran for his life all year last year. So he's very capable of keeping plays alive. He's a good but not great athlete. Like, if you've seen Ty Simpson at Alabama, the athleticism, I think, is very comparable. Very comparable. On a college field, you look like a really good athlete, but when you put him on the NFL field, it's like, yeah, good athlete, but I don't think you're going to outrun that edge rusher to the corner, right? So I think we're going to see a little bit more of that side of Mendoza. And this is the nice thing about having a really good quarterback. They can just go win games for you. And maybe that happens tomorrow. This Oregon defense is really good, though. Oregon is one of the 3 best teams in the country. You know, it's them, it's Ohio State, and it's Miami. And look, I don't know how you want to like order that. You can order it however you want to. I know for me, I would put Oregon at the top. I think Indiana is going on the road and playing against the best team in college football tomorrow. And I'm not taking them to win on the road against the best team in college football. I'm not doing it. I don't think that they cover the 6.5 point spread either. It has come down though from 7.5. So there's probably something that I'm missing there. And maybe Indiana goes up there and they give Oregon a run for their money. I just don't think that they're quite good enough in the trenches yet to do that. Making that leap from a second-tier college football team to a top-tier college football team is very difficult. We've seen Penn State try to do it for the last 10 years. It's really hard to do. I don't think Indiana's done it in year 2 of Coach Cignetti. Maybe next year's the year, but I think this is another year where Indiana goes probably 10-2, and they sneak into the playoff as like a 9 seed or something like that. That's going to do it here on The Real Jonathan Smith Show. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to listen, no matter how you listen. Go over to Indie Sports Ticket on YouTube. Subscribe to My Take Is as well. That's my other little YouTube channel thing that I do. I'll be back on the air on Monday from 10 to noon. Dan Dockich is back on Monday as well, and we will talk to you then.